I am taking the day off. I hope you have a prayerful, respectful Memorial Day holiday. In my absence, here's Tom Nicoletti and Texas Farm Bureau Roundup.
Hello and welcome to Farm Bureau Roundup for this Memorial Day weekend. Rain continues to fall across a wide cross-section of Texas this spring. We will have reports on the benefits of the precipitation following a very prolonged drought. Here's more from our Roundup reporters.
There's been a remarkable turnaround in the Texas Panhandle. After months and months of drought, suddenly a bunch of rain. I'm James Hunt in Amarillo, and I'll have that story.
Spring is here, and that brings Texas agriculture up to full speed. Hello, I'm Barry Mahler, and I have the story in today's report.
The 25th International Grassland Congress was hosted by the American Forage and Grassland Council in Covington, Kentucky, May 14th through the 19th. I personally hosted the Central Grasslands pre-Congress tour in Texas and Oklahoma the week before. This is Dr. Vanessa Olson from Overton.
Gardeners are really interested in new plants for the garden. Please join me, John Begnaud, as we talk about some landscape plants that are new to Texas gardens.
We begin this week in the Texas Panhandle, where James Hunt tells us a prolonged dry spell has come to an end in a rather dramatic fashion.
Very dramatic indeed. Looking back to the middle of April as the time of spring planting drew near, many Panhandle farmers had been doing some pre-irrigation, trying to get their fields ready. And in many other cases, producers were anticipating planting their seed into dry dirt and hoping that rains would soon follow. But in late April, we picked up some good rains scattered around the area, and in May, the floodgates have really opened. For local agronomist Russell French, the recent change in our weather is very welcome.
James, this rain has been a godsend, just no doubt about it. You know, we've been in this drought since in the last summer, and most areas in the Texas Panhandle has received some very good significant rainfall.
In fact, above average rainfall for the month to date is being reported by the National Weather Service at each of its 4 climate data reporting locations in the Texas Panhandle: Amarillo, Dalhart, Borger, and Childress. Russell French, who operates French Agronomics in Amarillo, says the recent rains will likely encourage farmers to plant a little more corn on limited irrigation acres than was originally planned, but the big beneficiary will probably be dryland sorghum.
We've improved our subsoil moisture from nothing to maybe we're probably up to a couple of foot, maybe a little better than that in some areas now, which definitely is enough to go ahead and plant dryland grain sorghum. You know, sorghum is a great crop for this area. It's very drought tolerant. It's relatively inexpensive to put in. So you're going to see a lot of grain sorghum be planted.
Of course, there can be some downside to getting so much rain, as planting has been delayed in some cases. And there is also the threat of things like hail, which has been mixed in with some of our recent rain events. But all in all, our crop situation looks much more promising thanks to recent moisture. And let's not forget about our ranchers. Mark Mitchell, who is an owner and manager of Crutch Ranch in Borger, says he suddenly has a lot more green grass for his cattle.
It's probably as good a start as we've had. You know, drought of 2010 through 14 was tough. 15 was a pretty good year, and we're probably as good as we were back in 15 as far as a start. It was a little late starting, but man, we've got some submoisture, and the grass is really trying to take off and do something.
And improved grazing conditions can help our ranchers from a profitability standpoint, as there will be less need to buy other feed sources. For Farm Bureau Roundup in Amarillo, I'm James Hunt.
Barry Mahler has been traveling across Texas lately and reports today on the beneficial rainfall for regional crops and how things are shaping up in his area of the Rolling Plains.
As May rolls along, the pace of agriculture picks up to a high speed across Texas. Although not everyone has received rain, a lot of the state has, and that's helping the farm industry a lot. Driving across Texas in the last few days, one of the things I observed is some really good-looking corn in central Texas. It looks a lot like Iowa or Illinois from the highway, and a lot of the crop looks to be only one good rain away from a very good crop, and is at least on schedule and maybe even a little bit ahead of schedule. Cotton is in the ground down south, and planters are tuned up and ready here across the rolling plains. It's plenty early yet, but we should see a lot of planters rolling in the next couple of weeks. The hot, dry summer cut the dryland crop way short last year, and producers and the support industry, such as our gins, need a good year. The long-range forecast looks promising, so farmers will be anxious to get the crop up and growing. I don't know any way to describe the cattle market right now other than strong. The drought has cut the numbers dramatically, so there are less to go to market this year, and that means higher prices. There were pretty fair numbers of yearlings grazing on wheat across the rolling plains this year, and I'm hearing reports of some pretty good gains. We had that unique combination of weather that provided just enough moisture to grow the forage, but not so much that the energy had to be used by the cattle to wade mud and stay warm, and that usually means good gains in our wheat pasture cattle. Wheat pasture cattle running on wheat, as the term would explain, is one of the really, really good things we do here on the rolling plains of Texas. Wheat harvest will begin here in a couple of weeks, and the big question is, will the wheat yield as good as some of it looks? It went through a dry spell for a few weeks just as it was setting grain, and I'm betting that yields will be all over the map, but farmers are hoping for the best to recover from some of the high cost of production. So we'll see lots of long days and diesel smoke in the air for the next couple of months as farming across the rolling plains comes to life. Reporting from North Central Texas, I'm Barry Mahler for Farm Bureau Roundup.
Earlier this month, international visitors from China, Germany, and New Zealand were in Texas as part of the Central Grasslands pre-Congress tour that also took them to Oklahoma. Dr. Vanessa Olson traveled with the group prior to the International Grasslands Congress held in Kentucky.
The tour began in Corpus Christi with the first stop at King Ranch in Kingsville. The King Ranch covers 825,000 acres, which is more land than the state of Rhode Island. Over the course of over 160 years, the King Ranch has led some of the first cattle drives, developed the Santa Gertrudis and Santa Cruz breeds of cattle, bred the finest quarter horses, and produced champion thoroughbreds. King Ranch is a major agribusiness with interest in cattle ranching, farming, luxury retail goods, and recreational hunting. Additional stops in this part of Texas included the Caesar Clayburgh Wildlife Center, the Serpentarium part of the National Natural Toxin Center, and South Texas native grasses at Texas A&M before heading to San Antonio and the Hill Country. The next tour stop was the Hillingdon Ranch in the Hill Country region of Texas, west of San Antonio. The family uses registered Angus cattle, fine wool sheep, Angora goats, and white-tailed deer as tools to manage the native plants adapted to that ecoregion. The Hillingdon Ranch operates under a range management system that matches the number and types of livestock with the land's ability to produce forage. The result is high-quality products and a healthy, thriving landscape. From the Hill Country, the group traveled east to Madisonville. Dr. Jason Clear, beef cattle specialist out of College Station, hosted the group for a tour at the GKB Cattle Windy Hill Ranch. The group saw an introduced forage system, Brahman and F1 Brahman by Hereford Cross Cattle at Windy Hill. At the conclusion of the Windy Hill Ranch tour, Dr. Clear hosted them at his ranch for an Aggie prime rib lunch. The next stop in Texas was the Texas A&M AgriLife Research and Extension Center in Overton. The center currently is home to research programs encompassing pasture utilization and forage quality, annual ryegrass and small grains, forage legumes, animal physiology, and horticulture. Before heading to Oklahoma, the tour visited a producer in Sherman. Craig Watson develops and markets replacement heifers developed primarily on mixed species forage crops, including oats, brassicas, wheat, and Bermuda grass. Craig employs a rotational multi-paddock grazing system to manage his forage program. The tour in Oklahoma kicked off at the Chuck Coffee Ranch. The Coffees operate with state and local agencies on innovative grazing strategies that has sped up the return of perennial grasses to their landscape. In addition to providing the forage for their herd of 800 to 1,000 beef cows, the ground cover provides wildlife habitat, adequate fuel for prescribed fires, and reduces soil erosion from wind and water. In Oklahoma, they toured the Fort Reno USDA ARS Station, the Clem Range Station, the Museum of the Great Plains, and the Comanche National Museum. Major research trials conducted at the Clem Range Station include studies on stocker cattle, patch burning, cow-calf, pasture and forage improvement, livestock management research, and education programs. The primary commodities located in the Rolling Red Plains area are wheat, range, and cattle. The Rolling Red Plains extend from south of the Red River to north of the Oklahoma-Kansas border, consisting of approximately 9.4 million acres, which occupies a significant portion of western Oklahoma, excluding the Oklahoma Panhandle. This is Dr. Vanessa Olson with Texas A&M AgriLife Extension in Overton for the Texas Farm Bureau Roundup.
Finally today, new plants are being introduced for Texas landscapes. Horticulturist John Begnaud explains.
New plants always intrigue gardeners, and it's very important to understand that these plants might have happened by themselves. They might have been bred by breeders. There might be mutations. There's all kinds of ways that these new plants just show up in wholesale nurseries, maybe in breeders' areas, and then they're developed and they're tested. And then they have to be grown, and then they reach the retail nursery where you and I walk in and say, wow. First question is, will that grow at my location or my home or my garden? And so we have to do a little research. It's very intriguing to see these new plants. And if they come from some part of the world that, like, say, Australia, New Zealand, they may not even grow in Texas. So you have to do a little research. You have to read their tag. It's important that they survive at least that first year. And if it is a perennial, that it seeds itself for a year or two and it becomes root hardy or it survives. So it has to be adapted first to your soil. Many times if you read the tag, a pH for acid soil, but you have acidic, you have alkali soil, so it's not going to work. The light, when they say full sun, they don't mean Texas full sun in many cases, because out in West Texas, that sun is so bright and so hot that many times you need a different type of plant for that environment. And water is very important. Be sure to know whether it needs a lot of water, low water, whatever the level of care is very, very important to making it succeed in your landscape. Stretching the zone has become real common right now, where plants are tropical and then we put them outside. We stretch that zone to see if they will survive. Sometimes they live year-round in the right environment. Sometimes they go dormant in the winter. Sometimes they die down to where the root is very hardy and it comes back from the root. And sometimes they're totally dead and they will not survive. And you need to know that kind of information. Many times that is on your county AgriLife Extension website, or sometimes it might even be on the internet. So do your research. Don't be just wowed by these plants, but we encourage you to try new plants for Texas garden. John Begnaud reporting for Texas Farm Bureau Roundup from San Angelo.
That is our program for this week. Thank you very much for joining us. Be with us again next time as we travel to deep South Texas, plus eastern and central regions for the latest in farm and ranch news. Have a safe and enjoyable Memorial Day holiday. For everyone at Farm Bureau Roundup, I'm Tom Nicoletti, and this is the Texas Farm Bureau Radio Network.
Neighbor, let's take a long look at the grains, courtesy of John Tuggle, Tuggle & Company, Corpus. We'll call Milo, delivered to Corpus Christi in May, D's plus 90, 1082. Yellow corn to Corpus, delivered in May, July plus $1, 6.90 3/4. We'll call Progresso the same. Hard red winter wheat to Houston, July plus 85, 903. We'll call Progresso July plus 65, 883. Number one beans to Houston, August delivery, November less 70, 1102 1/4. Neighbor, we did move a whole lot of cotton in Texas. East Texas, Oklahoma, 490 bales. Low side 74.12, high side 75.87. That made the average price $74.99. Neighbor, you've been listening to us for 27 years almost. You know we ain't average. We're the best darn farm show. And you've been listening to us, and that proves that you're the best darn farm show listener. We are Down on the Farm. You are our neighbor. Thanks for listening to our 14 affiliate stations or at downonthefarmradio.com.